Hello everybody, this is Jasmina, and in this video I'm going to talk about BaZi self-punishments. I'm going to talk about all the punishments, but they're complicated enough that I decided to separate them into three groups, maybe four, I'll see. But I'm going to tackle the self-punishment first because it's kind of the easiest to see, and uh, and in perhaps some ways relatively easy to fix if you take the right steps. So, what a self punishment means is that you have a hard time letting go of painful experiences, and this is emotionally traumatic. Harms have to do with real, like physical trauma. This is emotional trauma. So, it's a different type of thing and it affects you differently. And these things have happened in the past, and what it does is it causes you to make some bad choices in the present. And what I mean by bad is that it doesn't hurt anybody else. It just hurts you, limits your ability to move forward in life and to make progress and maybe get a better relationship with someone or a better job. There's something that's holding you back because you fear something might an emotional trauma that you've already had will repeat, and you're just really worried about it. I mean, for example, if you had asked someone to marry you and they just turned you down right away, you will know that you read the interaction between you two incorrectly, and so that it would be a very easy case for self-punishment to kick in. It could be also maybe being fired in front of the whole office. Maybe you're I mean, that doesn't usually happen, but maybe it did happen, and uh, and then and so then you feel that too. You feel that was extremely embarrassing, and so you don't want to repeat it. And so maybe whatever mistake you made, you overcorrect, and maybe you limit what you could do at work because you're afraid you'll get into trouble again. Those are the kind of things. That's not physical trauma, that's emotional trauma. Now, oftentimes on reflection, when you have an interaction, you can recognize why you did something. And you can recognize it had to do with a past bad experience. And you can tell yourself that, maybe you won't do it again next time it happens because maybe this is at work and you turn down a uh, a task of some sort and somebody else got it and got promoted, and you realize, oh, I could have done that, but I was too afraid. Then you say, well, I won't do that next time. Well, unfortunately, in a similar situation, you're likely to repeat the same actions again unless you do something to resolve your emotional trauma and to get over it, basically. Uh, and I don't mean just you ignore it. You have to find a way to make it okay and not so traumatic. And letting go of the past can be difficult if whatever that was changed how you act. And that is, I mean, I think all of our experiences in some respect change how we act. Certainly as a kid, when you running too fast and you fall and really hurt yourself, well, you learn exactly how fast you can run. This is all just part of life. And so we do tend to change things, the way we do things through past experience. But you have to know when it starts to harm you. And sometimes you need help understanding from like your friends and family when you're doing something like this, because you might not even recognize it. Now, depending on how bad the trauma was, you might need to get some professional help. Usually, this is quite short term because it is understanding, kind of like reliving what went on and just understanding it's not really your fault. It's everybody played into this. So, this helps you be okay with what happened. And if you can be okay with what happened, then things get much better because then you aren't afraid of it having it happen again, which isn't that likely to happen anyway, but because you don't feel so bad about it, you can move forward. Now, there are four types of self-punishment. They have purportedly have slightly different effects. So if it's dragon, that is two dragons side by side. It's and there's another thing, and I'll talk. That is not the only thing you need. You need some additional than just two dragons side by side. But when that one is activated, it usually produces pessimism. You feel like nothing is going your way, and you often feel like you don't have what it takes, and so that's feelings of inferiority, and it can also lead you to abuse your body in terms of alcohol, drugs, too much or too little food, so just abusing your body in general. Now, the horse is different, supposedly. It's more irritability. You're in a bad mood all the time. You don't get enough sleep. You're anxious all the time. That's not much fun. But it's different than this. Here, you don't tend to abuse yourself, um, but your brain abuses you because you're anxious all the time. Now, the rooster is more impulsiveness, doing things without thinking, and even to the point of self-harm. There's all kinds of self-harm out there, physical self-harm. Uh, some people, you know, like cut themselves because supposedly this somehow helps the emotional pain be overridden by physical pain. I think that's what they decided why people do this. Now, the pig is kind of a bit weird. I mean, basically, it's forgetfulness. You forget what you promise, I guess. Indifference about what's happening, you don't care anymore. And also lack of self-control, which of course could lead to the abusing your body. But it could be other things too. I mean, emotional lack of self-control is also included here. Now, if you want to read a lot more detailed explanation about this, this is a good source. It is uh, it it goes into much more detail about all of these. Now, when it comes to self-punishment, it can be in your natal chart. It can come by from an annual um, pillar or a 10-year luck pillar. And of course, the natal one is the hardest one to deal with because you don't know anything else. Annual is usually almost not a problem because you don't need to. I mean, it's hard for it to get really bad in 1 year, basically. But a 10-year luck pillar, yes, you can develop some bad habits, and it can take a while for this one to go away. Now, if something does happen with the annual, once that year is up, very quickly, all the issues in your head that was giving you self-punishment just seem to fade away. It takes longer with a 10-year luck pillar, obviously. Now, self-punishment needs two things. First off, it needs to have two of certain animals, not all animals, but two identical animals side by side in your chart, in your natal chart. But that only gives you some effect. To have the full effect, you must also have whatever main chi is in that animal sign be either an element in the heaven stems of any pillar or in the main chi of any other branch. So I'll show you what I mean. So for the dragon, uh, the, it has as its main chi Wu Earth. So what other animals have this? Well, the dog has this as its main chi. So if you have two dragons side by side and you have another dog someplace else in the chart, it doesn't need to be adjacent, then you would have this. And you could also have it if you have another Wu Earth up on the heaven stems of any of the four pillars. The rest of these only you need to either have a third animal, and of course here you can have another dragon too. Hopefully it's not a three in a row, but because that makes it quite complicated. But the these guys either have to have a third animal of the same animal. This is the horse, has ding fire as its main chi. So if you have any ding fire anywhere in the top row, you would have it. And for the rooster, it's sin metal. If you have sin metal in the heaven stem or another rooster, you would have it. And for the pig, it's run water and or a third pig. So this would be what you need. And I'm going to show you a bunch of examples. I think you will understand by the time I'm done. So here's an example of somebody that does not have a natal self-punishment. They certainly have some issues because they do have the dragon next door to each other, but there isn't a third Wu Earth anywhere else in the chart. And so this is, let's say, maybe you get 50%, maybe less than 50% of a self-punishment. So you maybe a little bit more sensitive than many people, but this doesn't really cause you a lot of problems. Now, the dog or a dragon annual or luck pillar, however, will activate this because it brings in that third Wu Earth. And also the Wu Earth luck pillar would do that too. And this one is an example, and these are all actual charts because I want you to be able to look at the whole chart if you wanted to. I don't know any of these people, and the people are not going to be able to watch this because I don't allow kids to watch it. So this person is only 12 years old, so they're not going to be able to watch this for another, I guess, 6 years. But I don't know if I'll have it on my channel anymore at that point. But this one does have the dragon and then has the Wu Earth here. So this is full. This is full-blown natal self-punishment. And so they have issues, without a doubt. They have some issues when anything happens that embarrasses them, they take it to heart. And they're really sensitive. And that, of course, makes it kind of hard for them to function in a clear-minded way. Here's another example. Now here's a dog down here. The dog also has Wu Earth, and it's the only one of those combinations that have an extra animal sign, and that's the dragon. So there's the third one. So this person is basically the same, has the same sort of problems. Now, there is no real full-blown clash here because this is one away, this is two away. This one that's two away is, most practitioners don't even call it a clash. This one is a minor, a very weak clash. The punishment is stronger in this case. So you can also have a self-punishment occur with time, as with all of these kind of formations. If you have a dragon, a horse, a rooster, or a pig in your natal chart, and whichever one of these, whenever that luck pillar comes along, you will have a luck pillar with the self-punishment. The year, you also have it, but in general, it's not a big deal. So if we take an example, and I'll show you in a second, but of a dog-dragon clash, sort of like the one I just showed you, but you only have one dragon and only one dog, and they're non-adjacent. And there is no other Wu Earth in the heaven stem, so this is not, this would not be considered a self-punishment. But whenever a dragon luck pillar comes along, and that would usually just be once in your life, but that would have that third instance, and you would have a dragon. That would be the second dragon. So then you would have the self-punishment kick in. And of course, during a dragon year, you would also have it, but the year is usually not terribly bad. But under this condition, yes, during that luck pillar, you have an activated self-punishment. Since it goes on for 10 years, it takes a while once that luck pillar is over before you go back to normal, but you will go back to normal. It just, you have 10 years of issues. Now, an annual, like I said, the annual dragon, very limited. It only lasts a year. Usually, unless it actually comes with your 10-year luck pillar, it's not going to be much worse than normal. You might not even notice it. And but the 10-year luck pillar can change your habits, and it takes you a while to go back to normal because you have 10 years to deal with this kind of thing. So here's an example. This is a dragon. No other, in the heaven stem, we don't have another woo earth and nothing here. But during this luck pillar, we have a woo earth. That luck pillar will activate this. Otherwise, this isn't really activated. It's maybe, you may have a few issues, but it will truly activate during this luck pillar. And there is also another time it can do it, and that is during your dog luck pillar, where you get the another woo earth. So now this is activated again. And then you also have the dragon. So, but this is at 116, very unlikely that you will care anymore at this point. And most people don't make it that old anyway. And this can happen. You may find, if you have something in your chart, you may find that that luck pillar doesn't come along until, you know, you could be older than 120 when your luck pillar would come along. So uh, it's not necessarily going to affect you. So here's another example. Here we have a dragon and a dog, and they're not adjacent, so there's no real clash. And but during the dragon luck pillar, this is now two dragons, and the dog will activate it. Now, this will happen in this luck pillar with the dragon. It will not happen during a dog luck pillar because you don't have two dragons. You would have three woos, but you don't have two dragons, and so you don't have the self-punishment. So so you don't have to worry about that. However, this chart is kind of interesting. It has another self-punishment. Of course, again, this doesn't happen till quite late in life. But here's the pig and the pig, and you have run water as its main chi, and there's the other run water that's always been sitting there. But until the pig luck pillar comes along, it's not a big deal. A pig year, you may have a few problems, but it's not going to be big. And here's a different one. We'll do the horse. This is a non-adjacent horse, so this is not a self-punishment because they're not adjacent. But during this luck pillar, which starts very young at 9, you get this one, another ding coming in. And we don't have one up here. The bing does not count. It has to be ding. And so this person is now just 10 years old, and so this luck pillar has just started for them. And I think the teenage years for this person could be rather rough. And of course, all of these are for male charts, simply because I didn't bother to flip it. So, but it would apply to a female chart, but this timing would be different. So, but if you know somebody that has this chart, I don't, but if you do, make sure that their parents knows that this can be a very rough 10-year period for them. And, when you have things happen as a teenager, oftentimes those are things that really bother you for quite a while. So, so this may be harder for this kid Once he reaches the age of 20, or actually 19, then his new luck pillar starts. But he may have some trouble during his teenage years. A lot of I might be someone who kind of like withdraws from people because he doesn't know how to deal with it. Now, resolving a self-punishment takes effort. It can be done, but don't expect it to be simple. Self-forgiveness is necessary because a lot of times when something happens and you get embarrassed, you blame something you've done when it's the other people's reactions that's the problem, not necessarily your action that made them like laugh at you or something like this. Now, being rational and realizing other people have had the same experience and that you're not alone will really, really help. And talking to people like this is a really good thing. And so you may have to find the right group of people. That may be all that you really need. And recognizing when you're starting to have a self-punish being activated, like you're you're reacting in a certain way, and and there's a point in time you go, wait, I've done this before, I don't want to do this. That is key. Once you can start doing that, once you can recognize before the thing is done, before whatever you turn down something because of you're just too afraid to fail. When you start to say no, if you recognize that's what's going on, then you say, no, I'm not going to say no. I'm going to say yes to like a task at work. This is where you start to really break it down. You have to recognize before like the whole thing is done that you're starting down that same road. And usually people can then change their mind at that point, and doing that a few times usually fixes the problem. Of course, if it's in your natal chart, you're going to have to work harder at this. But if it's in like a 10-year luck pillar, this is what you need to be really cognizant of, especially once that luck pillar is done. And that will, let's say, get rid of the problem much quicker. So with enough practice, you can avoid having these negative feelings overwhelm you, which is usually what the self-punishment does, and it just makes you freeze up. If you can avoid that happening and you can think more rationally about it, usually you can overcome self-punishment. Now, if you've done that, if you've actually resolved the issues that create a self-punishment, or at least that possibility, it can have little effect on you, especially if you are talking about timing. Now, everybody in their life has had, people in class laugh at them. I think most people at least, or some other kind of thing that you find yourself very embarrassed, and that is where the self-punishment starts. Is you don't want to feel that embarrassment again. But if you turn it around and you say, well, I'm only half of this thing, it's at least the other people's fault equally, that helps. And so this is where if you can resolve this kind of thing, because everybody does this to some extent, then when a, when a luck pillar comes along, then maybe it's not going to be a problem. So I have a horse in my chart. So that has the ding in the sub chi, the main chi. And we only care about the main chi. We don't care about any of the sub chis. This is the main chi we care about. So I have that, and then I have a ding fire in my heaven stem of my month. So when my horse luck pillar came along, I had a self-punishment. Now that started when I was 42 years old, and that was the horse luck pillar. Now, at that time, I knew I wasn't going to work forever in what I was doing, but I had 1 year left of the contract, and I was a postdoc, and so I was working like 60 hours a week, but I was only paid for 20, which is not abnormal for a postdoc. So uh, you just, you're trying to make it. So you work very hard. And I didn't want to do that for God knows how long, because who knows when you might get a break. But at 43, it was that last year in that existing contract, I had a big breakthrough in understanding a problem that I had been working on off and on for a while. And then when I looked through the literature and found nobody else knew this, I realized I understood something that nobody else understood, at least here on planet Earth. And for that, I mean, this was my goal. I wanted to learn something or know something nobody else knew, at least for a little while. Then I was going to publish. I still haven't published because I hate publishing, but it's not breakthrough like quantum mechanics or relativity. It's a very minor thing, but still, it's something that nobody else understands. And so then I decided to quit my job. I just said, well, I'm not going to go through another 3 years of working so hard because I have a lot of other things I wanted to do. So uh, I could do this. I could quit my job because our house was paid off. And this is a little bit of an aside, but we had a very high interest rate. Like nowadays, the interest rates are very high, but we had saved money. We just weren't certain, where we were going to end up, because as in physics, you tend to have to move where the job is. But we had saved money, and we paid off the house uh, early, um, by just putting every extra penny we had into it. We didn't go out to eat. We didn't take vacations. We just, you know, um, paid every little bit we could, and we paid it off much earlier. And the total interest we paid was about $14,000. If we had paid it off on the bank schedule, it would have been over $200,000 worth of interest. So we just paid it off early. And to do that, we chose a fixed rate mortgage because the variable rate mortgages punish you for paying it off early, which is like ludicrous, honestly. But this was one of the best moves we ever made. And it made our life so much easier. Also, my husband's income was enough. It was more than adequate for our basic expenses. So, I could do it. Now, this turned out to be one of my happiest decades. It's supposed to be a miserable decade, but I mean, it wasn't miserable at all. I learned a lot of new things that I had been wanting to learn that I kept putting off because I was working 60 hours a week. Uh, like most people with a lot of water in their chart, I'm interested in a lot of things. So this gave me the opportunity to do that. I lived abroad, which is something I wanted to do since I was a teenager. So this is, it was like perfect. And the only thing that I can say bad happened was I had I had to have a couple surgeries on my hand, um, and the second one, the one that they had to remove a lot of scar tissue and I had 26 stitches in my hand, that was painful, but that was only a couple months of pain out of that 10 years. So, I mean, I still remember it because it really was quite painful, but it didn't last that long. And so that would be the only negative thing. But what was I supposed to experience? All this kind of thing. I wasn't anxious because things were going so well. Uh, didn't, I'm not a great sleeper, but I didn't notice anything different. Um, you would have to ask my husband whether this applies. I'm sure that when my hand was healing, I was a little irritable, but that was like 3 months. So, uh, you know, other than that, this was a fantastic decade. So I think that I maybe because I have always looked at things. I mean, I'm kind of not an average person. And so Uh, I used to get teased fairly often, and I mean, my opinion, of course, I did not have the self-punishment all my life. But when I was a kid, it was like, well, that's your opinion. I like it. I don't care if you don't like it. So that is kind of the, if you can do that kind of thing, when a self-punishment comes along, you don't feel it, because I didn't feel it. Uh, you know, you can be fine. So I'm not too worried about this. Um, in part, even if it does affect you, after that 10-year luck cycle is done, everything goes back to normal. It takes a while, but everything will get better. So that's it. I'd like to thank you guys for watching, and I hope this has really been helpful to you guys. And I will do probably the ungrateful punishment next, and then the other two I will do after that. But the ungrateful punishment is really complicated, much more complicated than this. So it's going to take me a little while to finish that one. But thanks again for watching.